So in September, Ruby Frankie from the 8 Passengers YouTube channel was charged with 6 counts of basically abusing her children. This person was a very famous YouTuber who gave a lot of parenting advice and showed herself disciplining her children very harshly. And a lot of people at the time had a lot of problems with that. And I'd actually watched YouTube video essays about her. So when she actually got arrested for this, it wasn't surprising, but it was kind of like a really weird moment. But there's a YouTube channel called Cruel World Happy Mind. And I've been watching her channel for like a couple years. And something that keeps popping up is like mum influencers. And what often a lot of them are is like very conservative, right? And a lot of them have crossover with conservative organizations. And that's to say that mums are not okay right now. Mums are not doing okay. Obviously, you know, this economy isn't great to have a child in, but mainly I am talking about American Christian mums who are actually helping to usher in fascism in the United States. Now, one thing I will just say quick, I was thinking, like, do I talk about Mumsnet in this video, which is more of like a British thing? And British mums are not okay either. But the reason I don't really want to talk about that in this video is that because of how weird transphobia is in the UK, a lot of gender critical feminists who are mothers themselves, they don't consider themselves right-wing. They consider themselves like actual liberal feminists, and they're just pushing back what they see as men invading women's spaces. You know, by that they mean trans women. And although there is a lot of crossover there, you see people like J.K. Rowling praise Matt Walsh, for example. I felt like to keep more focused on the far right angle, or like the more traditional far right angle, I'd stick with American Christian mums. So if you're wondering why I'm not talking about that, that's why. But yeah, I've been wanting to make this video for a while because I've just been following a lot of this stuff, seeing TikTokers, YouTubers, all these Christian conservative mums, and obviously we're going to talk about this a lot, Mums for Liberty. And it got me thinking really about why a lot of mums are so drawn to fascism. I guess either being tricked by people saying they want to protect their children, or, you know, being easily manipulated under this slogan, like, I am going to protect your child. And of course, as a loving parent, most parents do want to protect their children. But like I was talking about with those YouTubers and TikTokers, especially that Ruby Frankie lady, there seems to be in like conservative circles in America, this protection of children actually veers into, I'm actually going to abuse my child and be super disciplinarian and just basically ostracize them from their peers and society, like homeschool them, for example, as well, often, just to actually isolate them because they are so scared of this child being influenced in a way they don't like. And I guess the divisions in America are more pronounced in terms of politics. Like, we just had Thanksgiving, and how many times do you hear the stories of, oh, I have to go back to my family as a young person, and they're all right-wing, and they're all horrible, and like I hate most of them because of this. And it feels like conservative parents are very scared of this, and part of their war against education is kind of like a war against their child turning against them later for their conservative politics, because they're like, well, if you don't have critical thinking skills, if you don't learn about the wider world, if you don't go to college and experience like diversity and other cultures, then you'll always be either easier to control or easier to stay part of this family. So I just want to talk about all of this today and just talk about how mums historically in America have propped up white supremacy, but just talk about how extreme patriarchy and this, I guess, putting motherhood on a pedestal is something that has been around for a long, long time. And of course, this is adjacent to the trad wife stuff at the moment. But again, just like with the Mumsnet stuff, I feel like that might just be a separate video because I feel like the trad wife stuff is more pushed by men, where everything we're going to talk about today, while men are often involved, this is primarily led by mothers and American, primarily white conservative women. So all of that coming up for you today. Please like the video. Let me know what you guys think about any of this stuff in the comments. Also follow me on social media at the Kavernacle, on Twitter, on Instagram, on basically everything. Consider becoming a patron if you want to support my work continuing for the future. Benefits include getting access to the patrons Discord server, and check out all the links in the description for anything you might want to find. So what inspired this video is a headline I read, I think a couple months ago now. Mums for Liberty chapter apologizes for quoting Hitler in its newsletter. So an Indiana chapter of Mums for Liberty, a non-profit that advocates for parental rights in education and was recently labeled extremist by an anti-hate watchdog, is apologizing and condemning Hitler after using a quote attributed to him in their inaugural newsletter. The group's Hamilton County chapter on Thursday posted a revised version of its newly launched newsletter, The Parent Brigade, on Facebook after it had previously shared a version that featured this quote. "We condemn Hitler's actions and his dark place in human history," read a statement from the chapter chair, Paige Miller, on the cover of the revised newsletter. "We should not have quoted him in our newsletter and express our deepest apologies." The first version of the newsletter included the quote, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." While the origin of the quote is not entirely clear, it has been attributed to a 1935 speech made by him. Late Wednesday, after the Indianapolis Star reported on the quote, the local Mums for Liberty chapter updated the newsletter to add a context section. The quote has frequently been used by conservative Christian groups as a warning of what they experience as liberal or left-wing attempts to indoctrinate children, but some who encountered the newsletter interpreted the Mums for Liberty's use of the quote as an endorsement for him and his beliefs. So this actually wasn't the only time they were quoting him. And the thing is, they're saying, like, you know, he's a terrible person. They're pretty much just repeating his propaganda and his fear-mongering from the 1930s, right? And I honestly think if most conservatives in America knew more about him, they'd like him. And a lot of them do like him in some weird way anyway. Like, I made those videos about Jordan Peterson seems to admire him and a couple others. But yeah, like, honestly unsurprising. And as we're going to get into Mums for Liberty a bit more, do you think they honestly don't like fascism and they don't like far-right politics? Because it's pretty much all they promote. So let's get into an article explaining this a bit more. Mums for Liberty, where are they and why are they winning? So Mums for Liberty is a national organisation that oversees dozens of semi-autonomous county chapters. So they have about 100,000 members across 278 chapters in 45 states. So if we go on the Mum for Liberty website, we'll just have a quick read. Very fast already seeing some of these pictures, but who are we? We are mums, dads, grands, aunts, uncles, friends. Mums for Liberty welcomes all that have a desire to stand up for parental rights at all levels of government. Our founders are Tiffany and Tina, mums on a mission to stoke the fires of liberty. As former school board members, they witness how short-sighted and destructive policies directly hurt children and families. Now they are using their first-hand knowledge and experience to unite parents who are ready to fight those who stand in the way of liberty. Our mission, Mums for Liberty, is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. Our vision, Americans empowered and thriving in a culture of liberty. Our values, as joyful warriors, we stand for truth. We build relationships, we empower others. How we fight, we hold leaders accountable, we spread awareness, we oppose government overreach, we promote liberty, and engage on key issues. Ready to stoke the fires of liberty in your community? Are you tired of feeling like you are alone in your concerns for the future of your children? Do you try to speak to community leaders about your concerns and your voice goes unheard? There is power in numbers, and the purpose of our organization is to fight for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents. And they have a pledge on their website. I pledge to honor the fundamental rights of parents, including but not limited to the right to direct the education, medical care, and moral upbringing of their children. I pledge to advance policies that strengthen parental involvement and decision-making, increase transparency, defend against government overreach, and secure parental rights at all levels of government. So we're going to look at that Twitter account in a sec. But yeah, if you're getting like authoritarian far-right vibes from that, you'd be correct. And also, what I always find interesting about these parental groups is it seems like they don't see their children as even like a unique human being. It's literally just like, I own you. Your child is basically just an extension of yourself, and you must do everything you can to protect them from what you perceive as like terrible things, like, I don't know, learning who Martin Luther King was, because all of this is wrapped up in the fear-mongering about critical race theory, the fear-mongering about bathrooms for trans students, and one thing I'm not going to focus on too much, but of course, what Mums for Liberty do is target school boards. Now, school boards aren't something unique to America, and I don't really know much about how the UK system works. Like, I kind of know people who were involved in my primary school, you know, like friends' parents, but it all seemed pretty like boring. And they didn't really have much of an influence on things that got taught in school or anything. That just seemed to be like a national guideline set out by the government rather than these school boards. But obviously, anyone who's not American, how we know school boards is it literally seems to draw the most insane people possible to rant about these conspiracy theories.
Or the politicians, once you get a power, you will never relinquish it. Do you think that the 4 feet of marble that holds you above high in this chamber will help you from the fate of humanity which you are unleashing? No! It won't! Your children and your children's children will be subjugated!
Like, when I was covering the furry bathroom panic, that all stemmed from a school board thing. And I think what it is with a lot of mums in these areas is that if you grow up in a very patriarchal society as a woman, what is forced down your throat a bit more is your whole goal in life should be to be a mother. So if you become a stay-at-home mum, eventually when the kids are a bit older, maybe all in, you know, primary school, secondary school, you're going to have more time on your hands. But also your education might have ended in high school. Maybe you've never even had a job in your life, because in a lot of Christian communities, I always see this on Reddit, people get married at like 19 years old, right? And in that, I guess people look for community, but it's a toxic blend where you have already a Christian conservatism. Then you have people who maybe haven't developed their critical thinking skills, and you also have people who have dedicated their lives just to being a parent, which is something, you know, my mum did as well. Like, I'm not shaming stay-at-home parents at all. It is nice to have that environment, and it is nice to have a parent who is there for you all the time while your other parent works and stuff. But also, if you don't maybe have many friends, or you don't have many hobbies, or all your friends are actually just mums like you, then it's really hard to break out of this way of thinking that your child is just everything. And your whole personality is just mother. It's not mother is a part of your personality. You are just a mother. That is all you are. That is all you will be. And it feels pretty toxic because eventually those kids will be old enough to leave. And that's why I feel like a lot of this is basically trying to make these kids stay under their thumb for a long, long time. And it feels like whenever I read about narcissistic parents on Reddit, which is American-centric, a lot of it stems from actually Christian conservative communities because of their views on either patriarchy, motherhood, what it means to be a parent. Basically means you have complete domination over your children, right? And they should be mini versions of you, not their own humans. But if we just go on Mums for Liberty's Twitter page, even if you got the sense that they were just like some standard conservative group, they are like a fascist group. And if you see what they're retweeting things like gays against groomers, all about this gay LGBT panic in school. But they say stuff like this, like we want it to be known that our friends at Mums for Liberty are not anti-LGBT. They are pro-children protection. But pro-child protection is just a dog whistle when conservatives use it. They just don't want their children to learn about things like diversity or things that go against their religion. Other stuff like this, over $18,000 spent per year on each student in Seattle public education. For this indoctrination, gay as slay, Seattle middle schoolers forced to send hate mail to Mums for Liberty. Again, talking about Seattle public schools, something they constantly use, they talk about building of the Red Guard in America, which is language I haven't heard in a while. Like, is it meant to be something about the Cultural Revolution and like the children who formed like these Red Guards? I think it is maybe alluding to that. So that is a weird one. I haven't actually seen much in conservative like rhetoric these days. But the Red Guard of America is being cultivated in our public schools. They're using your money to fund the indoctrination of the youth in America. Enough. And obviously retweeting people like Christopher Rufo, Chaya Raichik. It firmly is just another fascist organization, but obviously what they hide behind is, I just care about my children. I don't want my child to be indoctrinated in left-wing politics. I don't want my child to be indoctrinated in gender ideology. It's just the children. Let children be children, and once they grow up, well, they can make their own decisions. But as we're seeing right now, it's just an excuse to get your foot in the door, because once they start banning stuff for children, they actually start extending it to high school students, and then they start extending it to university students. And then recently I saw something, I forgot what state it's in, they're trying to now extend it, don't say gay, to the workplace, because it wasn't about children. That was just a convenient excuse they were using to try and get people on side who maybe don't know better, and get these like maybe confused mums, or mums who don't have great critical thinking skills, who have their entire lives wrapped up in protecting their children. And then the end result is, oh yeah, you just can't ever talk about sexuality in public society, apart from like in your own home, because we've completely banned it, and you can face legal consequences now for doing that. Again, never about the children. But Mums for Liberty is just like one group in like a wider, I guess, history of motherhood and mums being participants in white supremacy and fascism. World War II is an interesting case study, and how women were used in World War II, and the version of women you saw in different countries. And what people don't often understand is that the war between Germany and the Soviet Union was, for the Germans, like this race war. But also something that was obviously pretty confusing to them is they would fight women as well. There would be women serving in not just, you know, the Soviet military as a whole, as like maybe nurses and medics. There would actually be women soldiers, and there'd be women pilots. There would be women driving tanks. And it was in complete contrast into how women were viewed in Germany, because what fascism essentially is just an extremist version of patriarchy. Like, not only is there an expectation for women mainly to become mothers, and that's great, it's literally like, that is all you should be. You are just a baby machine for this fascist empire. In this society, that's how motherhood was depicted. The most noble pursuit a woman could do, and what was pretty much forced on her, was to just be a mother. And that was all she should be. And the men should do everything else. And while it's not necessarily the same right now with American conservatives, for most of them, this is the end goal. And part of the reason they want to end no-fault divorce as well is to trap these women even further. To trap them just to be caretakers, just to be mothers to children and looking after their husband. But just a couple things I want to read quickly about the history of women. So a Guardian article came out recently saying Mums for Liberty is part of a long history of right-wing mothers activism in the US. And I just want to read this and a Vox article to talk about the history of this stuff. So as the historian Michelle Nickerson demonstrates, the period surrounding the Cold War is a useful lens for understanding how mothers' movements became a pillar of American conservatism. Like Mums for Liberty, these groups responded to cultural change by condemning the spread of progressive ideologies through public schools. Fueled by anti-communist panic, they fought for the removal of textbooks, teachers, and administrators they judged to be tainted by progressive ideals. A defining feature of these groups was how they leveraged cultural beliefs surrounding motherhood for political ends. They invoked motherhood to argue that they were uniquely connected to the domestic sphere and child rearing, and therefore uniquely able to speak for the moral interests of parents, families, and children. The specific aims pushed by Mums for Liberty reflect a more troubling thread from history. White mothers' organizations were some of the most committed players in the mid-century project of massive resistance fought to preserve Jim Crow. This segregationist battle was particularly concerned with legal mandates for school desegregation, and one of its battlegrounds remains central to the mission of Mums for Liberty: textbooks and school curricula. In the South and beyond, mothers' organizations fought to eliminate books and teachings that highlighted white violence or white supremacy. Furthermore, they routinely attempted to remove books from the curriculum that highlighted black contributions to the nation, which, like, history is just absolutely repeating itself there. But a Vox article went into this even further. So this is from 2021, but white women's role in white supremacy explained. So Stephanie Jones-Rogers, a history professor at UC Berkeley and author of the book They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners, told Vox they were co-architects in the system. They were at the table when the system was designed. That remained true after the Civil War, through the birth and the evolution of the Klan, and during the Civil Rights Movement, when white women were some of the most vocal opponents of school integration. White women's investment in white supremacy is older than the US itself and goes back to the economy of slavery, though white women have been seen by some historians as passive bystanders to the brutalities of slavery. They were in fact participants, as Joan Rogers explains. Before the Civil War, white women had little economic or political power, with one big exception: they could buy and sell people. And they did so, using enslaved people as a way of building up wealth that would have not simply be transferred to the husband in marriage. Slavery gave white women freedom, autonomy, and agency that they could not exercise in their lives without it, so they deeply invested in it. And after the Civil War, white women didn't simply give up on this system, instead they doubled down. Many, that meant becoming active in the Klan, which at one point had 1.5 million female members. They became especially important once given the right to vote. So I liked what that kind of touched on, that women in America have tended to be seen as also victims of the system because, you know, it's a patriarchal system that also sees women as lesser than. But at the same time, there's different systems that dehumanize you. So you do have patriarchy, but you also have white supremacy. And in the realms of white supremacy, which you can't really divorce from patriarchy, but at the same time, white women were still seen as better than most other people in the United States, and they did benefit and uphold this system. And just on the subject of things like Palestine and Israel right now, you see this in Israeli propaganda. I made videos on it, where you have like this elevation of like Israeli women. They can still suffer discrimination in their own country through patriarchy, but they are still upholding this colonial system, aren't they, by participating in it, even if it isn't completely for their benefit, because they'll never be seen as equals under patriarchy. But in this system, they are still going to be treated better than, you know, a lot of people who live in Israel and, of course, the Palestinians. That goes without saying. But one more thing I wanted to read you was by Phoebe Cohen in 2021 for HuffPost. And it was, I joined a far-right group of mums. What I witnessed was frightening. And they joined a Facebook group and they joined like an actual meeting. So I thought it was an interesting insight here. Look out for the trigger words, the woman says. She's perched on a chair in front of the room. She's well-dressed yet funky with elegant boots. Equality, diversity, inclusion, marginalization. These words are critical race theory. If you see these words in your kid's homework, you need to speak out. I am in a meeting held by a local right-wing mums group. It's an organisation catering to mothers who are bent on protesting at school board meetings to stop supposedly evil critical race theory agenda from being taught in public schools and address other typically conservative concerns. To learn more, I joined a local right-wing Facebook group for mums. Once inside, I found the members were all stripes of Republican, and I was pleasantly surprised to see opinion was not monolithic. Several mums argued against the more far-right posters. One woman posted an objection to children reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Divisive concept, she wrote, with a broken heart emoji. Underneath was a screenshot of a direct message from someone who appeared to be a student that read, I'm in English right now, we're currently reading To Kill a Mockingbird. There's a part where Calpurnia brings the kids to church with her, and another black woman is being extremely racist towards Scout and Jem. My teacher was saying it was not racism because white people have a higher power over black people in society and that black people can't be racist. There were several indignant emoji reactions in response to this post. One mum, however, pushed back. Well, the woman at the church complained that Calpurnia had brought white children to the black church, possibly one of the few places black people felt any sense of freedom and safety. It's a little absurd to call the woman racist given the context. And this comment got a couple of likes. So talking about going to the meeting, I listened to the speakers at the meeting while they discussed how to run for, campaign and pressure school boards. Many parents bemoaned how they had to pull their kids from public schools over mask mandates and enroll them in private schools. It was a common story. I got the impression that most of these families had income levels that allowed them to pay thousands in private school fees just because they wanted to take a stand on masks. I was probably the poorest person there. There was a lot of anger directed at teachers, Rat out these teachers, one mother instructed. Find a lawyer who can challenge these teachers. Another woman disdainfully noted that teachers don't even know what they're doing half the time. They just pull it off the internet, which is very ironic. A third woman said there is no discipline for teachers outside of taking away their credentials. I raised my hand. What do you say to people who are like, oh, you're going to put bounties on teachers' heads, you're marching outside school board members' homes with guns? I could see several women visibly flinch at the word bounty. One woman said she disliked the term bounty, but she could see the need for monetary compensation for those who turn in teachers that were doing things parents found unacceptable, like teaching to kill a mockingbird. There are no repercussions for teachers who break the law, she said. If we have to offer monetary compensation for people to report teachers, I see no problem with that. It's an incentive for people to wake up. Another woman raised her hand. I know we want to change school boards, but elections aren't until 2023. What do we do until then? We can't just sit around and let them attack our kids. We have to do something. I caught a gleam in the woman's eye I didn't like. Was there some flirtation with insurrection being suggested here? What was she saying? Another woman nodded. Listen, we've tried playing nice, but they just dig in their heels and dig in their heels. We have to start becoming not so nice. That is probably just like a little microcosm of like the broader landscape of these mums groups where, you know, going crazy about teaching kids to kill a mockingbird is common, suggesting that you should go harass teachers for doing this and put bounties on their heads for people to harass them because they don't do things you like for your child. And of course, it's all this like very toxic belief in that these women feel like they have some sort of ownership over their children in general, but also it's just a toxic mixture as well of, you know, a lack of critical thinking, often a lack of education, often growing up in very, very conservative communities, and often finding your own community only with like-minded mothers who all have been indoctrinated in this pro-patriarchy view of women's highest role in life is to be a mother. And when you have all that together, you get a group of mothers saying that they should probably take violent action against teachers who are trying to like groom or indoctrinate their children because they taught them about To Kill a Mockingbird or read a Martin Luther King speech. And like she was saying there, a lot of these women are very well off because if you can take your child out of public school and stick them in private school because you don't want them to wear a mask in the pandemic, then obviously your means are very high. And maybe you and your husband both work, but if it's a more traditional household, he's the one who works. So like that's what you become concerned with. And like I said, when you don't have as good an education and you're from a certain generation, maybe like older millennial, Gen X and stuff, I think misinformation can spread a lot quicker because people just don't have the critical thinking skills on social media. They didn't grow up with it. And I know from older people in my own family, thankfully, they don't read the wrong stuff, but I could totally see them falling for some of this propaganda because they don't know what to think about it. They get bombarded. And as we saw with things like Brexit and Trump with Cambridge Analytica, sometimes they even get targeted by this stuff to make them feel a certain way. And why Facebook is so toxic is that you have these private groups which no one can see, but can draw in thousands of people to all radicalize each other in this echo chamber. And that's what Mumsnet is to an extent as well, although you can go on that and see that for yourself. And what you're seeing there is a lot of these fascist policies are now being swept in because mums are targeting school boards and either getting people elected who pander to them or getting themselves elected and then literally changing all these things from within. And then, of course, as a voting bloc in conservative states, they're going to vote in the most extreme candidates. Ron DeSantis is essentially the blueprint for this. And now, you know, they're suggesting Don't Say Gay might be extended to the workplace as well. Because it's never about children, but it's a good entry point because it seems on the surface apolitical even. Like, I just want to protect my child. Can't everyone who's a parent relate to that? You just want to protect your child from the scary big bad world. And it's all about this constant fear and paranoia, which these people have been indoctrinated in themselves because they are in more closed communities. So they see anything like diversity or teaching about racism as like a threat to their power and a threat to their children. And why the propaganda is often so effective is, like I said, most people who are parents can relate to, I guess, the love they have for their child. This love might manifest itself in very toxic ways, but they can relate to the feeling of, I want to protect my child. And just like, you know, with Donald Trump's election in 2016 and Brexit, sometimes there's just the feeling something is wrong in society. And you see it right now, I guess, because most people don't know it, but it's because of capitalism. But, you know, if your rent's increasing, if things are just getting worse around you and worse for you economically, you know something is wrong. And when times are bad economically, it's much easier to create scapegoats, create, you know, villains of what are making society bad because you can't pinpoint it. So for these mums, it's the teachers. And it's the teachers destroying American society, and we must preserve liberty. Because if we don't, it's bad now. It's going to be even worse in like 10 years' time. So we must do something. And I think also, the last thing, for Americans specifically, I think it's all like main character syndrome. Like I made that video about a year ago on the war on Christmas. And someone made a great comment to tie it all back to Kill a Mockingbird. They said, most American conservatives are waiting for that Atticus Finch moment in that they will stand up to the powers that be and make this speech and just become this hero of their own story, right? And it's so true when I watch these school board meetings. Like these mums really think they're doing something. They really think they're heroes for doing this. They really think they are in their own movie. And all of that together just creates this toxic culture, and the mums are just not okay. And like, how do you even change this? Do people just have to stop being parents to make them like so much less easy to manipulate? I don't know. But anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.